Okay, let's dive into some advanced methods for teaching vocabulary. We're going to move way beyond the traditional stuff and into what really works.
You know, for the longest time, learning vocabulary just meant one thing: memorizing long, boring lists of words, right? Well, thankfully, things have changed a lot. Today, it's not about memorizing. It's about building a deep, real-world understanding of how words actually work.
All right, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with how to select and present vocab. Then we'll get into the power of chunks. After that, we'll cover how to consolidate and review, with a special focus on the IELTS exam. And finally, we'll wrap up with how to assess what students have learned.
Okay, so first things first. Before we can teach anything, we have to figure out what to teach, and then how do we introduce it in a way that actually makes an impact? This is the million-dollar question for any teacher, isn't it? And the answer, believe it or not, isn't just more words. We need a much smarter, more strategic way of thinking about it. It really boils down to two key things: usefulness and frequency. I mean, is this word genuinely valuable for what my students need to do? And maybe more importantly, how often are they actually going to see it or hear it? To get a real answer to that, we can turn to some pretty powerful data. And that data source is called a corpus. So what's a corpus? Well, think of it like a giant, searchable database of real language: books, articles, recorded conversations, the whole shebang. By analyzing a corpus, we can see, statistically, which words pop up the most, taking all the guesswork out of what to teach. Okay, so we've picked our words. Now, for the fun part, how do we introduce them? The goal here is really simple. We just want to make it memorable. That first impression is absolutely crucial. You know, just like this slide shows, sometimes a really simple but high-impact presentation can make a word just stick. It doesn't have to be complicated, it just has to be powerful. And this is just a perfect illustration of what knowing a word really means. It's so much more than just a definition, right? It's the form, the meaning, the words it likes to hang out with, we call those collocations, and seeing it in context. You're helping the student build this rich mental image. All right, let's take that idea and run with it, because this next part is maybe one of the biggest game changers in modern vocabulary teaching. We've got to move beyond single words. Just look at this. It's the perfect example. A student might know go and they might know off, but put them together, the bomb went off, and the meaning is something completely different. It means explode. You can never guess that from the individual parts. And that multi-word unit, that's what we call a lexical chunk. This whole idea is the heart of what we call the lexical approach. Basically, it's a way of looking at language that says, hey, maybe the real building blocks aren't single words and grammar rules, but these pre-made chunks that we learn and use all the time. I mean, just think about how you talk. As the linguist Michael Lewis pointed out, so much of what we say is just these ready-made phrases. I'll give you a ring. I'll drop you a line. I'll see what I can do. We don't build those from scratch every single time. We just pull the whole chunk right out of our memory. And lexis is just a fancy word for all the vocabulary items in a language. As you can see here, it's a whole spectrum. It goes from simple word pairs like blonde hair, all the way to more complex, fixed idioms like swim against the tide. Okay, so we've picked our words, we've presented them, we're talking in chunks, but how do we make sure all this great stuff actually sticks? How do we get it from short-term memory into long-term memory? Well, that is all about consolidation and review. And this is so important to understand. Seeing a word just once, it's not going to cut it. Not even close. Research suggests a learner might need to encounter a new word in different situations as many as 10 to 20 times before they truly own it. Repetition is absolutely key. But here's the secret sauce. It's not just any old repetition, it's spaced repetition. Cramming a word 10 times in one day isn't nearly as effective as seeing it today, then again tomorrow, then in a week, and then in a month. It's that spacing that really locks it into your long-term memory. And when you do review, make it active. Don't just look at a list. Do things like chunk spotting. Have students find the chunks in a text. Or have them use a dictionary to find collocations. Retelling a story with the target vocabulary is fantastic too. And here's a pro tip. Every once in a while, go way back and review stuff you taught a month or two ago. It makes a huge difference. So let's tie all of this together and look at how it applies to a really high-stakes goal for a lot of students, academic English and exams like the IELTS. This brings us into the world of EAP, or English for Academic Purposes. And this is a whole different ballgame. We're talking about the specific kind of English you need to, understand university lectures, read dense research papers, and write formal essays. In this world, vocabulary isn't just nice to have, it's absolutely critical. So if you're working with students prepping for university or the IELTS exam, there's a pretty clear toolkit they need. First, get them on the academic word list, or the AWL. It's a goldmine of the 570 most common word families in academic texts. They also have to nail that formal style, moving away from casual chat. And you guessed it, mastering formal lexical chunks is vital for hitting those high scores for fluency and coherence.
Okay, that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, assessment. After all this great teaching and practice, how do we actually know what our students have mastered?
A good assessment plan goes way beyond a simple quiz. You need a whole range of tools. Sure, multiple choice and gap fills are great for checking if a student recognizes a word, but if you want to see if they can actually use it, you need things like sentence completion or maybe even a cloze test where they fill in gaps in a whole text. Using a mix like this gives you a much more accurate picture.
And that leaves us with this final, kind of mind-bending question. Think about it. If a student can use a word perfectly in the right context, but they can't give you a dictionary definition for it, do they know the word? It really makes you think about what our goal is. Maybe it's not about teaching lists of words at all, but about empowering students to actually use the language. Food for thought.